Are you gonna pronounce his name right?
That's Nakagawa.
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 Also, Tatsuya Nakagawa.
Now on to our expert, Tats Nakagawa.
Tatsuya Nakagawa. But
Tats Nakagawa.
yeah, you get to see our messy back end right now.
Sounds like you guys are doing a really good thing because I know a ton of companies struggle with this kind of stuff. So
because everybody thinks their messy backend is unique to them.
But my goal in my mind is by episode 100, the entire world knows that everyone has a messy backend.
Messy backends is where we like to hang out. So you want to make the blooper reel.
nice.
That's when the real magic actually happens, is before and after, when somebody just like, what? And you're like, dang it, I needed that. So
you show up and you bloop. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the verb. You to bloop.
Okay, Urban Dictionary, Here we come.
Are we ready?
Welcome to the messy back end of entrepreneurship. This is Lee Cassels, co-founder of SFQ Consulting. We all know that the back end is where most businesses fail, and I can tell you from my experience that all businesses have them, from solopreneurs to large corporations. This podcast is all about cleaning up that messy back end so you can save time, make money, and succeed. And now, here are your hosts, Sheila J. Logan and Nate Tucker.
Welcome, thank you all so much. We have a wonderful show for you today. As William Blake once said, what is now proved was once only imagined.
On our expert segment today, we're going to be speaking with Tats Nakagawa about using innovation in life and business. Tats is the co-founder and COO of a sustainable roof coating manufacturing company called Costagara. Over the past 20 years, he's had the pleasure of launching hundreds of products and services and co-authoring the book Overcoming Inventoritis, the silent killer of innovation, with a foreword by Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. He's also the host of a podcast on C-Suite Network called Specified, where he interviews leaders who have overcome adversity, built massive organizations, 0 to over 100 million, and made an impactful change in the building materials and coating industry.
And you'll hear real questions and stories from real entrepreneurs with real messy backends. As an added bonus for the Messy Backend Exposed, our expert, Tats, will not only share his experience, expertise, and the tools he suggests to get your backend cleaned up, but he will also expose what innovation really means and how to achieve it.
If you're an entrepreneur with a messy backend and you would like to submit your story or question, give us a call at 801-810-6726 or visit us at themessybackend.com. Thank y'all so much for joining us on today's episode of The Messy Backend. Coming soon, watch for the messy backend of being a single mom, as well as many other messy backend topics, from photography, speaking, book writing, traveling, and more.
How would you like to have your very own Messy Backend podcast? Find out more about how you can use our team, our brand, and our online platforms to start and build your own Messy Backend podcast. Visit themessybackend.com/join for details.
Nate and I would love to be on your podcast or speak at your next event. Visit themessybackend.com/speaking to send us your event details and learn more about us and our speaking topics.
Thank you to our sponsor, Yes Women's Network, where you will find the connections you need to achieve your dreams. Find out more at yeswomensnetwork.com.
Don't forget to subscribe, folks, to our podcast. Head on over to themessybackend.com/subscribe so you never miss an episode. Plus, check us out on Facebook and YouTube to see full video episodes. Now on to our expert, Tats Nakagawa, for his expert advice. Don't mess your seat, folks. Here we go.
So today we have a messy question submitted by one of our listeners. They say, it's pretty clear that innovation will be the key to the future. Not everyone will discover the cure for cancer, but they must be able to solve interesting problems in new ways to be relevant in the 21st century. People will need to be flexible, creative, and be able to reinvent themselves to have fulfilled careers and lives. How can we be innovators in our industries?
Well, thank you guys for having on your show. And I think that's a That's a very good question. I think entrepreneurship and innovation is a social exercise. And so let me explain. So let's say you put a 2x4 on the ground and you walk across it. It's a fairly easy task. But take that same 2x4 and put it 10,000 feet in the air and try to do the same thing. You are terrified, and it just feels like a completely different experience, but it's just putting one foot next to the other. So I get really impressed with entrepreneurs that change things, that are willing to go out on a limb. And sure, it's all about comfort zone. Like maybe you're comfortable in front of 10-20 people, making mistakes and having sort of successes and failures. But as the organization grows, or you're trying to push this innovation forward, you have to expose it to more people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And your comfort zone defines how far you can go with that in some extent. And if you have, certain limiting beliefs or certain things holding you back, let's say for me, I'm an entrepreneur. I love spreading ideas and sort of making changes, but I'm an introvert. And I really had to struggle with that because, at certain points, you'll find yourself self-sabotaging yourself. In high school, in grade 8, I went to this very strange school in which I had to take drama or band. And I hated the idea of going in drama, standing in front of 20 people, doing something silly. I felt so weird and so sort of grossed out about that. I ran as fast as I could to band class. And I showed up at band class and I had a trumpet in my hand. And I looked around the room and I didn't clue in, because I was running away from drama, that everyone was playing an instrument well. And no one was trying to learn how to play an instrument. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? Like I was trying to run away from drama, and I got myself into a situation. My parents are very musical. Maybe I could just wing it, blend in with the class. And no, that wasn't working out. I was so disrupted. They shoved me in the band equipment locker room in the back to practice by myself. And
they locked you in the closet to practice.
Yes. And
that's awesome. I mean, it's horrible, but that's an awesome story. I hope there's a happy ending.
And I'm sitting in there and I'm making horrible noises because I'm so bad at trumpet, because I thought maybe, there's only 3 keys on there, that was going to be easy. But no, with the less keys, the buttons, the harder it is, because you have to create the noises yourself. So I'm in there making horrible noises like and feeling really sorry for myself. And I clued in, maybe people will forget about me and the semester will be over and I will never have to think about this thing ever again. And I remember the teacher coming in a few days before the end of the semester saying, in order to pass this class, you have to play with the school in front of the entire school. And I remember my face going white. I don't think I remember feeling my legs. And when the teacher left, I ran to my friends and asked, what am I supposed to do? And he goes, pretend? And then concert day comes up. I'm sitting there. I'm staring at the entire school. And I wasn't even good enough to pretend. I just completely bombed. And since that day, I've been trying to become more comfortable in speaking and taking Toastmasters and coaching. And I even did stand-up just once, which was completely terrifying. But entrepreneurship and innovation is all about sort of airing out your ideas and being brave. And I think if you can look at all the areas in your life, like the messy back end, which you guys deal with, which we all have, and you can run away from that, gloss it over, try to hide it, or you can just run straight forward in that direction and try to challenge it. And I think That's where you find growth and
I
innovation.
think that's a brilliant. I feel bad that you have to bring that back out, but I guess it's a lesson that you learned that, hey, if I'd gone to drama, imagine what could have happened to me in the future. Also, man, that teacher just putting you in the room. I think you're right though. I love what you said, that innovation is a social situation. We talk about this often in several of our episodes, where people are afraid to put themselves out there, and by being afraid to put yourself out there, you're missing opportunities. And we talk often also about the guy on BBC whose children came running in the background. He had to put himself out there to do that. And it actually, the mistakes oftentimes are what catapult you into where you need to be. The worst thing that can happen is if you ask someone and they say no, or they don't reply. The best thing that can happen is you can end up with somebody like yourself on our podcast, where we just reached out and I'm like, hey, here's a guy that I know is pretty awesome. People really like him. We should ask him to be on the podcast. And you said yes. So you have to look at not how is it going to make me feel, or am I going to flop? It's how can this get me forward? Am I willing to take that risk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the main thing, right? I think we underestimate certain things that we can do, and we overestimate other things. But the things that we underestimate is, and it's commonly said, is that what we can achieve when we're persistent over a long period of time. And then as long as we don't get caught up with, books and media stories that make it seem like people are perfect and everything just shows up and that people's stories are linear, and that we understand that everyone's story is like a roller coaster, and people don't have it figured out, and innovators suffer. Doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or just a backyard or garage inventor, that everyone's experience is the same, and that you have to sort of learn from people and develop. Then it's good. I see all these people that I think, Nate, you come from the marketing background, Sheila, you do online marketing, but people compare their first draft to someone's 50th, revision. And I think that's crazy. But it's easy to fall into. And I find myself doing that in some regards too, but like, oh man, I have so far to go with this. But I mean, they just spent 5 years refining that, so you can't really compare those two.
Yeah, and it's funny that we do it and we see it. We see that they're 5 years ahead of us, and we still want to compare our first day to them. I was talking to a new client just the other day, and she's a realtor, and we're talking about getting her face out there more and online and connecting with people on that social level. And she's like, Nate, I'm so nervous. I don't have that confidence. I'm worried that my videos will be bad. And I said, do you have anyone like that you want to become, like? And she goes, yeah, here's somebody. And she pulls this person up. And I scrolled all the way back to their very first video, and we started watching their first video together. And Tots, it was horrible. Their first video was atrocious. No, don't get me wrong. Their videos now are fantastic. They're glorious. They're great. They're well edited. She's well spoken and everything. But her first video, oh man, like you don't even want to watch it. And I was looking at it, and she's even laughing at it and joking and like, oh man, that's so bad. I'm so glad she's developed and come to where she is. And I go, that was her first draft that she made public. She might have still even had first drafts before that. I said, do you think you can make your first post? Do you think it can be that quality? And she's like, yeah, I mean, I would have to try to make it that bad. And I'm like, exactly. But we don't see that a lot of times. We just look at where they are now, somebody way further ahead on their path than we are. And we go, oh, well, we can't ever get to that spot. Like you said earlier, it's almost self-sabotaging. Well, it really is in a way.
Absolutely. So and what I'm going to touch about when I say some people overestimate certain things. So I'll touch on that in terms of innovation. We have a tendency to fall in love with our ideas sometimes, right? I think, it's like, oh, this is so good, and get overwhelmed. So one of the things I always tell people is do something that I learned from the direct response world called the 3 a.m. test. And the 3 a.m. test works something like this. So imagine that you're going to a prospect's house at 3 a.m. in the morning. You break down their door, you run up the stairs, you grab them while they're sleeping, and you say, wake up, wake up. And then you tell them your idea. like, this is my idea for X. Now, two things are going to happen. One, they're going to say, that's wonderful. They're going to get up and they're going to jump up and down with you, or they're going to go back to sleep. So you really have to visualize how good is your idea, and really sort of distance yourself from that and get feedback that is good. Now, you can't just go to people and say, is my idea good? Because that's just a bad question. So the book that I like to recommend on that is called The Mom Test. And the concept goes like this. Whenever you ask your mom if what you're doing is a good idea, there's going to be a part of them that are going to be nice about it. So you can't taint the feedback. So you have to ask questions around it. So let's say you're trying to validate a service or an app. You have to learn more about how their lifestyle is. Like, for instance, hey, do you have a phone? What apps do you have on your phone? How often do you use the apps? Like, you have to sort of build insight in and around the question without asking a direct question. And I think that book gives you some preliminary thoughts on how to do that effectively. And then the last phase of innovation is I interviewed my sort of person I really looked up to when I was doing sort of innovation work or just doing our innovation agency is Jeffrey Moore. And I would always get to these point where I get 3 or 4 directions that would be very good in terms of innovation. And I wasn't quite sure if I could develop them any further to get further, I guess, validation. But these 3 or 4, they all look good. So I asked Jeffrey on an interview, like, is there something else I can do once I get to this point? And it was the most comforting thing, because Jeffrey Moore does strategy for Microsoft, Salesforce, Autodesk, all these giants, and thousands of other companies. He goes, you just have to roll the dice. At some point, you just got to suck it up and roll the dice. So I thought that was really wonderful.
Suck it up and roll the dice. No, you're absolutely right. It's because there is a lot of fear and a lot of risk. Going back to your kind of analogy with the 2x4 before, one thing that I think we definitely focus on is the risk, because if you lay a 2x4 on the ground next, in front of me, and you go, walk on that, Nate, I go, okay, what's the worst that'll happen? I fall off and now I'm standing on the ground that was, 1 3/4 inch lower than what I was standing on before. It's not that difficult. But if it's 10,000 feet up in the air and I fall, well, that's going to be a different story. There's a lot more risk there. But in order to be that innovator and that pioneer in whatever industry you're doing, you do have to be the one to walk across that plank first. You have to take that risk. You have to, like you said, suck it up and roll the dice and go, hey, hopefully this will land. If not, try again.
Yeah, I think that's a great skill to work on, be able to block out outside influences once you get the feedback, and to just move forward anyways. And to be able to be okay that, anything that happens to you now is not deemed a failure. It's just temporary, right? Like, if you quit, that'll just stick and that's the end of it. But if you keep going and you keep learning and you keep managing the risk along the way, when I started entrepreneurship, I knew I needed a mentor. So luckily I had a friend of mine that introduced me to a guy named Peter Rosen, who's still my business partner 20 plus years later. And he was an innovator. Like, he invented the Windows Media Player. He sold it to Bill Gates. And he also did some work on early 3D printing technology and a technology that was a precursor to the MRI. So, inventor guy, right?
Wow.
So what I learned from him is that he doesn't just think of stuff and it's like genius. Like, he has a very good way of running very inexpensive experiments in volume. And the great thing with online businesses is you can run lots of inexpensive experiments in volume. And I think people should take advantage of that and do a ton of it and just learn from that. And I think back in the day, I think we didn't have that ability to get close to people and find things out. And I think we're spoiled in a good way that we have access to so much insight. Like, for instance, if we want to learn about helping a prospect, like they have a whole podcast series, right? Like you can sit there and listen to them talk for 10 hours and learn everything about how their day goes, what they're interested in, and the wording they use and stuff. So to craft your message. So there's just a wealth of information you can tap from.
Well, I was thinking when you were saying, when you're doing all these different experiments, you're absolutely right. You can do it very affordably these days digitally. It's really easy to do, what we call in the industry split tests.
Yep.
Whether it be A/B split testing for, email opens or which ads are getting better clicks. Or like you said, you can even go in and figure out exactly what the keywords and people are using. And one of the things that I remind a lot of my clients sometimes, I go, we always take a step back when they're having trouble, like, okay, this isn't getting the results that I'm wanting to. This ad isn't, or this email copy isn't getting the results I'm looking for. I go, well, first of all, let's get a clear set on what that goal is that you're wanting to get the results of. But secondly, let's figure out, are your clients getting the results that they're looking for with your solution? And sometimes the best way to figure that out is really to ask them what their problems are, not, hey, what do you need, but what are you lacking? Where are your pain points? Where are you struggling? And then if you gather enough of that information and you're brilliant enough, like Tatsuya or Sheila, or sometimes I'm brilliant like on Wednesdays sometimes, and maybe parts every other Friday. You take that knowledge and you create an innovative solution. Testing and innovating these days can be a lot more affordable than even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch on one of the points is with innovation. I think one of the things that people link innovation to is originality and creativity. And I think that part is overrated. I think some people say, oh, I'm not creative, or I can't do this. And I think some of the biggest opportunities are already out there at any given time. If you look at all the innovators throughout the years, that there's never one person that was working on one thing. There's always a bunch of people that are working on similar things. And it's just a first person to execute it well, generally. But I think the biggest opportunity is just look at different industries and take industry practices or business models from other industries and applying it to new industries. There's tons of opportunity in doing that. So if you're just stuck in one industry, let's say the health industry or something like that, go into mining, going into groceries, look at how their business works, look at their practices, how they do things, marketing or whatever, and then try to take that and apply it. Look at the real estate industry and then apply it to industrial paints, like we're in coatings, right? So like just cross-pollinate those. And I think sometimes even now those industries are quite siloed out. And I think a lot of the value that's derived is by doing that. And then the second part of it is brilliant on Wednesday, Nate. I'm going to challenge you on that, because I think all of us, are amazingly brilliant. So I heard this story in which I think it was in the States somewhere, where there was this guy that was working underneath a car, and he was playing around with fixing something, and he just had some horrible luck, and the jack sort of shifted and the car fell on him. And he's just trapped underneath there. And as the jack fell, I think it knocked something else over, and it set the garage on fire. And, the fire is going up the walls, and he's struggling to get out. He just can't get out. And he's stuck there, and he's counting the seconds before he's going to die. And then just at the same time, his daughter is walking across and sees the garage going up in flames, and then rushes in there, sees her dad trapped underneath the car, goes over there and picks the car up and frees him. She's 18 years old and saves his dad. I believe that we all have another gear inside of us. It's just a matter of, can we tap into our why? How do we make what we do non-negotiable? Like, how do we go beyond fears? How do we go beyond doubts? We have seen this on YouTube plenty of times where people go up and lift cars. Now they're wrecked for weeks or months after that, but I'm just saying that we all can do a lot more than we think that we can do. So I always think that there's brilliance in all of us. It's just we have to find the right situation and be able to sort of peel away the fear to be able to access that.
I agree. I've had a similar situation where, we always wonder how we're going to act in a certain situation. And when that situation happens, the way that we act, we're always so grateful. If we can act like this girl did, lifting the car, I was able to do that in that situation where I was able to protect my daughter. If you stop and think about it before you do it, sometimes it stops you from really doing the things that you love. Is like you said, find that why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Nate and I started this podcast, and I just thought, well, nobody's going to listen to a podcast. And I brought Nate in so maybe people would listen, because I thought, well, Nate's more, he's more personality than me. So, I mean, I can second guess myself into not doing things all day long. But since we did start the podcast, we have met some incredible people. We've hopefully changed some businesses. I know that my knowledge, and I know Nate's knowledge, has grown, and our connections have been great. We've just had a really good time. But if I had said nobody's going to listen, why would somebody want to listen to this? Somebody told me the other day, well, the name of your podcast makes you think of a dirty diaper. I said, well, that's the point of the name of it. It makes you stop and think, right? So it's a little bit outside the box to go with that term. I think if we can look past the fear and look past the rejection that could be there, the things that we can accomplish are outstanding. Nobody went out and started something with the complete knowledge that it was going to be accepted. They found out afterwards. So you can't just not do it because you think people might not like it.
Absolutely. And I think, it comes down to, the original question is reinvention as well, reinventing ourselves, innovating ourselves. And I think one of the things I've struggled with, I originally started off in the health and fitness world. Like, we had a sports marketing business. And so I had a lot of knowledge about health and wellness and sports. But one of the things I've always struggled with as an entrepreneur is there's always something that needs to be done. And you're stressed out, you're working long hours, you're not taking care of your health. But I know better, right? Like, I have the education. At one point, I had my personal training certification, coaching certification. I ran a fitness center. I ran international fitness conferences. But my health just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Just slowly. You don't even notice it, like the temperature going up in water slowly. And I got to a point where I was on holiday, which is usually the time where you're outside your day-to-day. And I was reaching to tie my shoelaces, and I felt a pain in my stomach, and it hurt, and I didn't know what it was. It was kind of freaking me out. And when I got home from vacation, I went to the doctor and get it checked out. And basically the long and short of it is that my body was falling apart. And this was roughly 3 years ago. I was 252 pounds. I'm 5'11", that's quite overweight. And I had a wake-up call where I said, okay, instead of just putting task lists on and focusing on the business, I need to take this a step higher and say, health equals this, and that'll help my business. And really try to change my mindset that you have to really start with the diet first. And that was a big change for me because I love food. It was great, as a foodie, I think it's the scariest thing ever to kind of put that secondary and say, nutrients and stuff like that. But I was able to do it. And I slowly started to lose the weight, and I was losing around 10 pounds a month. And I lost about 80 pounds in about 8 months, roughly. And as I was going through that, when I had that sort of shift in thinking, I started to think, if I can change this, what else can I change? And there's all these other things that I let other people handle, like operations and finance, that I wasn't very strong at. My background's marketing, strategic marketing, innovation, but our company was very weak at operations. So the back end stuff. So we had all these great ideas. We get all these customers' excitement. And then our fulfillment and managing our profitability was weak. And I started to really question some of the stuff that I have and went back into it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to forget everything I learned in the last 18, 20 years. And then I'm just going to go with the beginner's mind and start from scratch. Where would I start? And I started back into the direct response world. I rebuilt up my understanding of marketing. Then I went into operations. I started to like it. I hated operations. Now I start to like operations. And then I also built up financial knowledge to the next level as well. So from a strategic point of view, it's been wonderful. So I heard an actor say, grow by running towards your fears. And I think the opportunities for growth and innovations are usually hidden in things that you're avoiding. I think those ROIs are extremely high. And if you start off by saying, I'm not going to tackle the whole thing, let's just start off by doing 2 minutes a day. And what does that usually happen if you spend 2 or 5 minutes a day on it? It usually gets over the excuses, and then you get into a rhythm and you might do 10, 20 minutes or whatever, but just have a daily discipline of tackling some areas that could bring you a high ROI. Those are some of the simplest things you can do to sort of change and transform yourself. And it's been a lot more fun when you do that.
So you mentioned earlier, innovation is more than just coming up with something that nobody else came up with. I know for me, myself, when I think of innovation, I think I need to think of something that nobody else has thought of. And this day and age, that's almost impossible. What is it that you think innovation could be explained as to help people realize that they are being innovative on a regular basis? They're just being held back maybe by fear or something.
Absolutely. I think from an organizational point of view, you'd have to think of it as trying to help others. Like if you're always trying to focus how to help others and you're listening in on their conversations and what they're struggling with and stuff like that, that's a good basis of innovation or being able to sort of develop things that create value. But I always find a broad experience or a diverse network of people that you hang around with facilitates that quite a bit. I think to some extent, we're all caught in some sort of filter bubble, and we have to figure out ways to sort of break out of that so it changes our thinking. And you have to figure out when you come up with your best ideas for innovation. And most people don't track that. Like, for instance, Darwin knew exactly when he came up with his best ideas. Do you know what it was? He used to take 2 walks every day. But he even went further than that. He created a walking path on his property, and he'd walk around in the morning and walk around in the just before dinner time. And he did that every single day, twice a day for his career. And his output in terms of new ideas and contribution is massive. So let's say you get your best ideas when you're driving. Some people do that. Some people take showers and they get their best ideas. Some people get their best ideas when they're around people. Some people when they're not around people, on a hike. There will be something that you do that's going to give you clarity. Do more of that. And that's like the simplest thing you do. For me, it's walking too. Like I'll walk every morning. I won't have an agenda. I'll just walk and just breathe fresh air. And that helps me a lot. For different people, it's different things. Some people, like when they're taking road trips, they're awesome. Or when they go to a special cafe, or when they're talking to this special person, the creative energy comes out. Figure out when great ideas come to you and make sure you document it.
That's interesting. I actually get my best ideas when I'm out running. So I actually have my voice recorder app that has a whole bunch of ideas on it. And then I come home and I go listen back and listen to them. And I realize some of them are crazy. Like you said, the mom test, right? Or the 3 a.m. test. Oftentimes too, I realize that my brain switches from analytical to creative after midnight, which is more difficult for me. I can get up in the morning and go running, but staying up until after midnight, because I'm an old lady now, gets harder and harder every year. That's true. I did notice that about myself. When I get my best creative ideas, when I'm feeling blocked creatively, I know that if I can stay up past midnight, it'll usually click and it will just start working if I can't get it to come while running.
That's wonderful. We all have that. It's just being deliberate with it, right? I think I'm going to mess up this quote, but I think Dolly Parton said something along the lines of find out who you are and double down on it, or be that more often. And I think we all have this way of being innovative and sort of proactive. We just have to optimize our day to sort of capitalize on our natural tendencies, and that can really sort of expedite innovation.
I read somewhere that the first 4 hours of your day is when your brain is the most active or the most productive or the most you can learn the most or something. So oftentimes for moms, that's especially hard. The first 4 hours of their day is oftentimes spent doing things for the family. So I always encourage my single moms, especially military wives who are often home alone with their children, if you can even wake up 15 minutes earlier and get your mind triggered onto something, then while you're doing those things like making the oatmeal and changing the diapers, your brain will still be processing those things. I think it was Mel Robbins that said there's two different types of procrastination. There's destructive and productive. I'm very good at the productive procrastination. If I can put a thought in my mind and let it work in the background as I'm doing other things, it develops so much quicker than if I sit down, like if I'm writing a book. If I just sit down to write my book and I sit there with a pen and paper, it's not going to come to me. I know what's going to trigger that for me is to kind of ruminate on it in the background.
I love all this new innovation you've got on thinking about innovation. You just innovation squared. I love it. You've doubled down on innovation, to quote Dolly Parton there. I love what you've brought to the table. I've got a background in marketing, but I've done work in several different industries with sales and marketing, those type of things. And a lot of times, you're absolutely right. I just hadn't really thought about this or expressed it out loud, is that I'll take ideas from completely different industries and go, hey, I know this isn't your industry, but we did something kind of similar to what you're trying to achieve over here with great success. Let's try it out here. And a lot of times it works. Not always, though. And so I'm not saying that like, oh, it's a golden rule that you take an idea from somewhere else and bring it over to a different industry that you're going to have success. No, you're not. But you got to suck it up and roll the dice.
No, that's really good. I talked to a guy named Jim Estill on my podcast. He was sort of an early mentor of mine, and he helped grow BlackBerry from like 100 to about 50,000 people. And he grew another distribution business up to like 350 million. And I asked him how he did it. And he goes, well, when I'm at this point in my business, there's certain problems that occur. I just look at businesses that are further along than we are, and I copy them and see what works, and then I rinse and repeat. I'm like, it's kind of simple, but I think a lot of things, we overcomplicate things and make it hard for ourselves.
Oh, I'm the queen of overcomplicating things. When I first started out in marketing, it was in the real estate industry, and the real estate industry is stuck in this rut, where they think postcards work and cold calls work and those kind of things aren't working anymore. And especially in those industries that are kind of stuck in this place of these things have worked for the last 200 years, we should keep doing them. Those kind of industries especially could look outside of their industry and say, how are other people doing it? Certainly looking in industries of the ones that are working, finding out what they're doing. Most things are not proprietary, so you can go out and try what they're trying. I think you're brilliant. I love how you've changed our thinking on innovation. My whole perspective on it has changed. I always thought it meant figuring out something brand new, but it's just kind of molding things into what you want them to do and overcoming fear and being willing to take those risks. That's what real innovation is. Absolutely love it. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Tats.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Well, folks, that's all for today's episode of The Messy Back End. It's Nate and Sheila signing off until next time.
Thank you to our advertiser, PodServe FM. They will help you get your podcast hosted and published quickly and easily. Visit them at podserve.fm/messy to find out more.
And thank you to our advertiser, ThriveCart. They're the #1 shopping cart software that grows your income from existing traffic with high-converting checkout pages, upsells, and affiliate campaigns. Watch the video on how simple this cart solution is at themessybackend.com/cart.
Don't forget to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform by going to themessybackend.com/subscribe and check us out on our YouTube channel for full episodes.
Well, folks, that's all we have for today's episode of The Messy Back End. I'm Wendy Wybeli, known as your Income Acceleration Mentor, and I'm the founder and dean at More Coaching Client Sales and Marketing Academy. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like my back end is getting cleaner with every episode. I can tell you from my own experience that processing, looking at the messy back end situation when it happens, helps you to grow and learn and be that much better as an entrepreneur. Join us again next week as experts share more customized business advice and tips about all the messy stuff that goes into the back end of entrepreneurship. Remember, you're not alone. Every business has a messy back end that needs a little attention.
Why, hello. I am co-host and amazing friend Nate Tucker. I'm in this like winter, cozy, sexy, chic sweater going on right now. And in my mind, I'm like, it's sweater weather because it's more boring than mud. Go out and be innovative now. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
Well, it's Wednesday, so you don't have to try very hard today.
Lucky me. Wow. Awesome. That worked out, right? Absolutely. I love what you say there about that making those, I guess, how am I trying to say this? We're definitely going to be editing this part out. You didn't use the word tests. What'd you say? How my mind went blank.
Experiments. I don't remember what I said.
Yes. So yeah, talking about doing all of these experiments. I can't even say it either. Experiments. Man, I cannot talk to
And I was so proud of you not talking about food when Tats brought it up.
I am so hungry right now. Food is my best friend.
The last 2 episodes, let's see, we talked about McDonald's, Cheesecake Factory, In-N-Out Burger, and pizza, and Chick-fil-A.
Wow, that's awesome.
You said Cheesecake Factory? I'm always impressed with how they run a business with so many menu items.
That's what we were talking about. Yes.